Chapter 21, the Byzantine Empire. So here's a review for the material that you guys have already read on Chapter 21, and hopefully it'll be interesting. So let's move on and go through it. So the Byzantine Empire, it is what evolved out of the Eastern Roman Empire after Constantine split the Roman Empire into two. And so what you have here is you have the Western Roman Empire over here, Eastern Roman Empire over here, home of Diocletian, and eventually when he divided it up, and so you'd have several different people in charge, four total, but really this is Constantine starting it to divide it, and then really other people building on that. But there's a clear division here. At certain points it came back together, but then it fell back apart after that as well. So Byzantine Empire, Constantine combined Greek, Roman, and Christian ideas. Very important that those three things are combined, because you got obviously the Greeks here, you got the Holy Land down here, and so. But since this was built after Constantine converted Christianity, Christianity was very important in the idea of what was important in the city. So it survived longer than Rome because Christianity united the people. Capital Constantinople was easily defendable fortress, so it did not need a lot of troops, and the Byzantine Empire used its wealth actually to pay for a large army also. Now, Constantinople was built on what was the Greek city of Byzantium, which is at the meeting of the Black and the Aegean Seas. Constantinople had a good harbor, was a center of trade on land and sea. It was easily defendable since the sea was on three sides and a huge wall was on the fourth. You just needed to man that wall, so people could not land on the other three sides because they were well protected as well. Constantine was modeled the buildings of Constantinople after Rome. He also kept a lot of the same laws and customs of Rome, so it's sort of Rome 2.0. The family was the center of social life. Most people were farmers and workers. Church officials, though, gave a lot of advice on how to set up the city. They worked to look after each other in the society, do their Christian values. About 600,000 people lived in Constantinople, and sometimes not quite as big as Rome, which had up to 1 million, but still pretty substantial, even today. And there were all types of beliefs. People from Constantinople still consider themselves to be Roman, though. Now, several emperors after Constantine died, Justinian became emperor, and Justinian was a good general. He was well educated, studied theology, studied religion, was probably the greatest Byzantine emperor. He actually conquered a whole lot of territory back that after the Western Empire had fallen, but he wasn't all that nice in some ways, but he was effective as a ruler. People obeyed Justinian because he had the last say in most things and had the support of the church also. His wife, Theodora, helped him to rule by giving him advice and convincing him to give women more rights. She was actually someone who was an actress, and that was sort of scandalous when he decided to marry her. But it ended up that it was okay because he was in charge. Women, due to Theodora, were allowed to own property. She advocated for their rights and property equal to their dowry, which was the wealth that a woman brought into marriage, and to raise her children without government interference if she became a widow, if her husband died. Theodora also helped Justinian put down a bloody rebellion against him. Justinian wanted to leave, this after basically the Nika revolt, where what ended up happening was that it looked like it was going to be something where Justinian was going to lose out. I believe it was after a chariot race, and all of a sudden everyone is shouting down at the emperor, and the emperor, who was not all that good at being very honest in his business dealings, and he had a habit of trying to basically steal, but with the government's backing, to take stuff from rich people, and the poor people didn't like him either because he led kind of an extravagant lifestyle. But what ends up happening is Theodora helps Justinian by convincing him to stay. She's not going to go with him, and he loves her, so he's going to stick around. And they put down the revolt in a very bloody fashion, but they're actually able to stay in charge. Justinian decided to revise the laws to make them easier to understand. This is what develops into something called the Justinian Code. This code helps to summarize Roman legal thinking for future groups of people to follow. This is an illustrated manuscript. Very fancy, very cool to look at. Art and architecture. He also built a lot of buildings and sponsored art such as mosaics, which are those pictures which are pieces of glass and other materials that are then put together in a picture if you look from far away. The most famous building Justinian helped to build was the Cathedral Hagia Sophia, which is this very picturesque building. In the back, you got the Bosphorus Strait, which is kind of the central reason why Constantinople is so important, because on one side you got the Black Sea. I'm not sure if it's over here or over on this side, but from this perspective, but on one side you got the Black Sea, on the other side you've got the Mediterranean Sea, and you have to go through the Bosphorus to get there. Have to go through the Dardanelles as well, but that's a little bit wider passage, I believe. So now, Conquest. Justinian wanted to reconquer the lands taken by the Germanic tribes. He appointed a general called Belisarius, who changed the way their army was set up and made it more efficient and effective. They also had a weapon that was kind of cool called Greek fire that ignited when it came into contact with water. So there's a picture of what it might have looked like. The Byzantine Empire was able to take back much of the land, but it was lost after Justinian died. Now, the church, Christianity, was the official religion of the Byzantine Empire because it's set up after Constantine is converted. The emperor was believed to be Christ on earth and was the head of the church. The leader of the church in Constantinople was called the Patriarch, and he was chosen by the emperor. Under the Patriarch were metropolitans, which were these officials that were in charge of important areas, and under them were bishops, and then under them were priests. Now, priests could get married. Most high officials were from monasteries and were not married, but that's obviously a difference between Catholic faith under the Pope eventually and what it was under the Eastern Orthodox faith. So the monasteries, how they spread this faith was the monasteries helped communities around them, as schools and hospitals. Missionaries helped to convert people in Eastern Europe by translating the Bible into Eastern European languages. Actually, a guy named Cyril was one missionary who used an alphabet based on Greek, the Greek one, to teach the Slavs, the group around there, the Bible, and this is where we get Cyrillic, which is still used as an important alphabet today in several Eastern European countries, including Russia. Some of the Byzantine Empire wanted to use icons, and this is a very important thing called the iconoclast controversy, which leads to a split in the church, in the Catholic Church. It leads to the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church being founded. Some people in the Byzantine Empire wanted to use icons. Others thought that these were religious images, statues, pictures, primarily statues though. Others thought the practice was like worshiping a false god, even if it is of a religious person. The Emperor Leo tried to get people to stop using these icons, but they were too popular and he failed. Since many people in Western Europe could not read, they needed pictures to understand their beliefs, and icons were especially important in the East and in the West. In the East, they weren't quite as important because people still were able to read, or quite a few people were, not most, but quite a few people were. But in the West, this is when the barbarians have taken over, and really a lot of knowledge and a lot of education has been lost. So when Leo III tries to get rid of icons, the Pope in Rome kicks him out and says, "You're no longer part of the church," and his supporters too. Patriarch goes out and turns around and says, "You know what, Pope, I'm not going to recognize you as the head of the church." And basically they actually each excommunicate each other and say, "You know what, you can't take communion." And obviously probably neither of them care too much because they both think they're right. So the Patriarch is fine. He still thinks he's doing the right religious things, and the Pope thinks he's doing the right religious things. So the Church and the Pope cut off relations with the Byzantine Empire, and that is kind of a big deal. When Christianity splits up, also even further, when the Pope crowns Charlemagne the Emperor of the Romans, and this really ticks off the Byzantines because they consider themselves to be Romans, and they thought that their leader deserved that title. All this helped to lead to a split in Christianity in 1054. This split led to many problems between the two rival Christian faiths. Roman Catholicism and Eastern Orthodox developed from this. Now, the empire does decline over time, but about 1,000 years after the Western Roman Empire falls apart. So, one of the reasons why is because farmers who had been promised land to serve in the army had that land taken away when the army didn't need to be so big, and this made them less loyal. If you get something taken away from you that you were promised, that's going to be a problem. The Vikings threatened to attack the Constantinople when they no longer had enough troops to defend it, so they had to rely on a group called the Venetians from Venice for military help. When the Venetians beat back the Vikings, but the deal is in return, they say, yeah, you know what, we'll help you out, but then we don't have to pay taxes in any city in the Byzantine Empire. And the Venetians, they really take advantage of this, and they become some of the best traders in Europe at the time. And this is how they get a lot of money, but the Byzantines, their empire kind of falls apart partially because they lose so much money. And Christians from the west, eventually during the Crusade period, and Muslims from the east are attacking to take apart chunks of the weakened Byzantine Empire. In 453, the Turks, or 1453, the Turks are able to use gunpowder and take over Constantinople, final last piece and most important piece of the empire. Up until that point, it had been able to defend it, but now it's over and done. And that is basically the end of this show here.